All right. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you again for joining another session as part of the Nerdio Tech Insider program. Good to see you all here tonight. Thanks for that. Tonight we are going to talk about the community edition of Manager for Wvd, sort of bootcamp style, so that only means you'll be tired after the session, basically. A lot of information I'd like to share, but don't worry, everything is being recorded. I'll share my slides afterwards as well, of course. So you can look everything back up after the session is done. And I'll try to keep it calm and slow where I can. So let me see the agenda. Right, here it is. So the agenda for tonight, or tonight for me, it's tonight, but for the session, I mean, is to do a quick recap on what NMW-CE, so Nerdio Manager for Wvd Community Edition, is all about. How it got started a month ago, what is allowed, what's not allowed, how to get it, and so on and so forth. After that, I would like to take you step by step through all of the installation steps, like the slide shows as well, of course. But basically from A to Z, how to get started with the installation, everything in between, a couple of tips, perhaps pointers to things to look out for. Possible errors, it almost always goes right, I can say, luckily. But I've seen a couple of errors pop up every now and again, and I'd like to share those with you as well, so you know how to handle them. Basic configuration options, some things to be aware of, by the way, as well. Once the installation is done, we'll get into that also. Save you a bit on resources. Basic configuration options, integrations, fully automated, cool stuff. Onboarding existing Wvd environments, because I can imagine that some of you might already have a couple of host pools running here and there. Very important. Also, how to get from the older version to the newer version of Wvd. We have that fully automated and built in as well. Some intermediate settings, a bit high over. I don't have time tonight to go over everything in great detail, you could say, but we'll get to that as well. And a couple of helpful resources. And I've also ended the presentation, or at least the slide section, with a slide on with all of the links to all of the the documents and other resources I will reference throughout the presentation. So to get started, Community Edition is available as a version 2.5.0. So if you need to upgrade. It has been available about a month from now. Of course, today we are already on 2.6.0. Just do the upgrade and you'll be able to use the Community Edition. So how to get it, the availability, all you need to do, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes as well, because we will go through all of the installation steps in detail also, just to make sure you are all on the same page and you know what to do at what time. So availability is only through the Azure Marketplace. Simply go to the Azure Marketplace or start up your Azure portal, search for Nerdio, select Manager for Wvd, and that's basically it. So very simple, straightforward as well. Its purpose, and that's something to be clear about as well, is it's only meant for private Azure Lab purposes. So no testing environments for companies or lab environments for companies, nothing like that. It's meant for, the community. So Azure private lab purposes only. You are allowed to run it for 25 users max, but it should be more than enough, more than sufficient within your own private lab environment, I would say. We've also thought about perhaps limiting some resources or features, but then we decided just to go all out. It made it a lot easier for us to make Community Edition available much sooner as well. And this way, you are also able to sort of experience the power and the flexibility, the added value of Manager for Wvd on top of native Wvd. That's sort of the whole idea, and to make it easier for you guys to manage your own personal private lab environments on the Azure platform. Also, when it comes to Wvd. So no limitations there. You can go all out. You can provision as many machines as you would like. Do anything you would like, you can from Manager for Wvd, which includes MSIX App Attach, AppsLogix, you name it. Just be aware that you will be the one paying for those resources consumed on the Azure platform, of course. Nothing we can do about that, or at least it will be credited to your subscription, and that would be the subscription where Manager for Wvd is deployed into, but we'll get to that, of course, in just a couple of minutes also. So also no limitations feature-wise. That also means that all of the features now available within the paid-for version in Manager for WVD are available within the Community Edition as well. And it will stay that way going forward, meaning if we come up with new versions, you will be able to upgrade just as in the paid-for version, and you'll be able to leverage all of the functionalities, features that we release from, well, basically from now on, or as of version 2.5.0, as you could see on one of the previous slides. All right, so how to get started. It usually starts with a couple of prerequisites. These are very straightforward and simple to go over, simple to configure if you do not have them in place as well. And it basically starts on our Zendesk page. It's publicly available and it's 100% dedicated to Manager for WVD, Nerdio Manager for WVD only, including, of course, the Community Edition. By the way, 95% of all that I will talk about and show you during this session applies to the paid-for version as well. So this is also a good way to get acquainted with Manager for WVD in production environments, perhaps. Again, it starts on the Zendesk page. Download the Quick Start Guide. It has a couple of pages, but on page 3, you will find a couple of the prerequisites to go over to have in place, just to make sure you will have a smooth Manager for WVD installation, which is always nice, especially if you do it for the first time, of course. Not to say that if you don't do it, it doesn't work, but it makes it a bit more smoother. You'll be quicker or quicker done quicker, I should say. It just helps. And as you can probably have seen by now, also, this is nothing big. If you don't have some of these things in place, it will take you a couple of minutes to set up, with the exception of setting up perhaps an Active Directory environment or synchronize it with Azure AD, which is sort of a basic requirement of WVD, not from Nerdio, of course. Once that's out of the way, let's hop over to the Azure portal and show you a couple of things. So this is how we get started. Like I mentioned at the beginning as well, just search for Nerdio and select Nerdio Manager for WVD. Click create, or go through some of the text videos, do whatever you like, of course. The plans is basically the licensing that comes with Manager for WVD and the various options that we have there. Give it a look, click create, and all you need to do is fill in a couple of fields. First of all, the subscription within your tenant that you would like to deploy Manager for WVD into. Pretty straightforward, right? A resource group, and this only has to be a resource group that is empty. So you can use an existing one, of course, create a new one. It just needs to be empty, and it's only used for the installation of the Manager for WVD, nothing more, as you'll see once we get into the graphical user interface part as well. Of course, a region to deploy Manager for WVD into, click next, and here you'll see the admin credentials that we need, but only for installation purposes. And you'll find some of this information within the Quick Start Guide as well, as not per se a prerequisite, because we would love it if MFA could be disabled for the account that is used for the installation, together with conditional access, for example, but only because then we can make use of the full automated part of the installation, which sort of is the second part of the installation, but I'll get to that in just a couple of minutes also. If you are not allowed to disable MFA or conditional access or anything like that because of ISO 27000, for example, or any other reason, not a problem. As part of the first step in the installation, as you'll see, there are also 2 PowerShell scripts, an older and a newer version generated, which can also be used to do the installation for the second part. And then, of course, you will be challenged for MFA, for example, I think 3 or 4 times, and it will just work in exactly the same way, fully automated. It will just take a couple of minutes longer, just so you know, and you'll see the fields in just a couple of slides time also. Final steps, do the validation. Of course, it won't be valid now because I didn't fill in the fields, but that's all you need to do. And of course, I don't want to share our time watching an installation getting done, which takes about 15-20 minutes for the first part, depending on the region, how busy it is, and so on and so forth. The time of day also plays a factor in that, of course. And then the second part, another 5 to 10 minutes. So I've done it through slides. Make it a bit easier. So once you hit create, this is what will happen. First, the deployment will be, it will get into progress, of course. Will take just 5 to 10 seconds. And then you can see exactly what is going on as part of the deployment itself, which resources are being created or activated, and so on and so forth. And it almost always is the case that setting up automation is finished last, but that's not a problem, of course. So This part will take 10 to 50 minutes, again, depending on the region, how busy it is, and so on and so forth. And this would be a good time during the wait to open up a notepad and think about, okay, what do I need once the installation is done? Because once the installation is done, the first and the second part, you will get a sort of a black screen with a couple of questions you need to answer. And these are questions about, okay, which Active Directory or domain would you like to use? Is there a certain OU you would like to deploy your machines into as a default, so to speak? Do you have an existing storage location that you would like to use to leverage FSLogic's profile containers is another one. And a couple of those things. So open up a notepad and think about your network you would like to connect to, perhaps a resource group to use. But don't worry, that can all be changed afterwards. And most of that is configurable on a per host pool basis as well. But I'll show you that also when we get to the graphical user interface part. Now, as part of this, a couple of things can go wrong. Usually they do not go wrong. But one of the things that happened a few times is that when creating the key vault, it creates a name that's already in use. And sometimes you just need a rerun, sometimes even two or three times, so that it generates a unique name, and you'll be good to go. That's just, yeah, well, it's just that way. Nothing we can do about it, basically. Also, the database, 99% of the time, that's not an issue, but it could be that there's a shortage on resources for whatever reason. And I've had this a couple of times myself as well, a couple of months back. When I used my MSDN account, what happened was, as part of the deployment, as you can see as well, a database in the form of a platform as a services database is being created. But if that is not possible, of course, the installation will fail. And as part of my MSDN account, it was because all of those types of free resources were sort of freezed. It was no longer possible to free up resources because of the COVID situation, which was happening, around March, April, May. So that took a couple of months, and now today it is possible again to use your MSDN account as well. But I'll get to that in just 1 or 2 minutes also, because there's something special around the MSDN accounts or the subscriptions as well. Once it's done, you go to outputs. On outputs, you will get a URL that is generated. Also put that on your notepad, at least save it somewhere because you'll need it. You'll need to paste that as a URL into your web browser, and then this is what will show up. And this is basically where the automation kicks in as well. And that's why, preferably, to make it a bit easier, MFA and conditional access should be disabled. But again, it's only for the installation. Afterwards, you can enable it again right after, because it's no longer needed. The account is no longer used. So even if you come up with a temporary account, for example, that's also totally fine, but you can throw it away afterwards because it's no longer needed once the installation of Manager for WVD is done. Anyway, here you can see both of the PowerShell scripts as well. So if you want to do it manually, so to speak, leave MFA enabled, conditional access, those types of things, you can use the scripts. But let's say we would want to use the runbook. All you need to do is start it, and that's basically it. It will finish or not, of course. So a couple of things that can go wrong could be around still not MFA being disabled or conditional access somehow, some way, in some form is still in between. It happens, well, not a lot, but it does happen sometimes. And also the MSDN account I was talking about earlier. I've seen a couple of cases where the MSDN account is registered within Azure Government within the US. And then it's not allowed to install Manager for WVD like this in there. So what you can do, I need to have a deeper look into that myself as well. But what you can do, you could use one of the two PowerShell scripts, open it up, look for the variable that says Azure Government, change it into the commercial one, run the PowerShell script, and that should also work. Need to test it, but in theory, that should work. I'm no PowerShell guru, so I don't have an example right now, but just give it a try in case you might be handy with those types of things. Once the runbook has finished, all you need to do is go back to this page. So leave that tab open, do a page refresh, and basically this is what will pop up. So this is sort of step 3, as you can see on the screen as well. And these are some of the questions I was referring to a bit earlier. So of course your tenant and your subscription will already be in there. And by the way, the screen has changed over the last couple of months. But in theory, it's well, not in theory, it's basically still the same. Just some things have been added, some things have been removed, but it's still the same concept. So all you need to do is click the hyperlinks that you see and then answer the questions. So fill in a resource group, fill in your network, Active Directory, perhaps even a separate OU, and so on and so forth. But again, this can all be changed afterwards. This is just to get started, to get into the graphical user interface of Manager for WVD, which will look something like this, but we'll get into a bit more detail, of course, in just 1 or 2 minutes. Basically, step 4, once you have Manager for WVD up and running and you are able to log into the graphical user interface, you can see here as well, go to updates, give me your install ID, so send it to beefandcame@getnerdio.com, and I will enable Community Edition for you. And that will be done within, let's say, 30 minutes to 60 minutes from the moment that I enable it, of course. So that's basically all you need to do to get started, to get it installed. This is then what it looks like. So this is sort of what happened during the installation, and this is what it looks like from a high-level architectural point of view. So here you can see the Azure Marketplace, of course, where we searched for Manager for WVD, selected it, and this would be your tenant. And as you can see, it gets deployed within your tenant, so within your subscription. So it's not multi-tenant in that sense. And as you can also see here, it's built out of, Manager for WVD is built out of various platform as a service services. Makes it very powerful, makes it very flexible, and also from a development perspective, by the way, because we can come out with new versions, or we come out with new versions every month, sometimes even twice a month. Also, a couple of things to be aware of, like I mentioned during the agenda as well. Excuse me. Like I mentioned, platform as a service services, where Manager for WVD is built out of, so no legacy technology, no VMs that we manage for you or anything like that. And also because it is deployed within your own subscription, within your own tenant, it's completely shielded from everybody else. So no third party has access. Nerdio does not have access. You are the only one who does have access, together with your IT partner, for example, if you would use this in production. So you don't have to worry about that also. You have full control from a security point of view as well. Of course, these resources do not come for free. Those are resources you consume on the Azure platform. You need to pay for those, so costs will be associated with those. And I'll show you how to take care of that well, right now, basically. So all you need to do, as you remember, you needed to create or at least use an empty resource group to deploy Manager for WVD into, which applies to the Community Edition, but it applies to the paid-for version as well. All you need to do is look up the app service plan, this one, and the SQL database. Just click it. So the easiest way would be to go into the resource group and just look it up. And as you can see here, you can see the pricing tier, and it's set to standard S1. Excuse me, guys. So it's set to standard. It always needs some time to figure out how much it costs. Always sort of funny. But here you can see you can set that to basic, and especially for smaller environments, and this applies to smaller production environments as well, this would be more than enough. Just click apply, and then the new costs, which will be sort of 1/6, I believe, of the standard cost, will then apply. And you can do this while Manager for WVD is running, not an issue. The same thing, yes. The same thing you can do with the app service plan as well. Look it up, go into the resource group, look it up as part of the installation. And then here you can see scale up app service plan. Click it. And with highlighted in blue is the current tier. But as you can see, by default, well, that's not something you can see, but by default, it will be deployed as a B3 instance. So for bigger environments, as of 250 users and upwards. But for smaller environments, and that applies to your personal app, personal Azure lab as well, of course, B2 or B1 would be more than enough. So it won't cost you a ton of money per month. And especially if you can make use of your MSDN account or an other sponsored account in that way, or something like that, it would be more than efficient to get you through the month and still save some resources for other things as well. And if it's only for Azure Lab purposes, you can try either one of these also. Just be aware that if you scale down the database and the app service plan, once you start to use Manager for WVD quite intensively, up to the 25 users even perhaps, and it might get a bit slow or sluggish from a graphical user interface point of view, this would be the first place to go together with your database and have a look at how it's configured basically. All right, so that takes care of sort of what to be aware of, the prerequisites, the installation, and those types of things. Pretty straightforward. It's actually quite boring even, because all you have to do, depending on if you get an error message in some way or form, of course. But if that doesn't happen, and in 90% of the cases that doesn't happen, then it's, all you have to do is wait for 20-25 minutes before you will be able to leverage the graphical user interface, which will look like this. Of course, this will all be empty because you won't have anything configured. You won't have any existing WVD environments if you have any onboarded within Manager for WVD already. And of course, we would like to change that. So that's sort of the next topic, you could say. I'd always like to start out under settings. It's sort of the base configuration of Manager for WVD, and everything you do on top of that is based on the default configuration, unless you change those settings on a per host pool level. And a lot of what you can configure on the settings, especially under integrations, and we'll get to that in just a few seconds, is configurable on a per host pool basis as well. And hopefully we'll have time to go over some of those as well. So let's start at the top as your environment. And by the way, when you are working within Manager for WVD, testing it out, giving it a look, or anything like that, make sure to use all of these icons. You will see them everywhere within the solution. It will tell you exactly what you can do, cannot do, what you are configuring, the type of feature functionality, where you need to go to for some additional information, and so on and so forth. Very, very helpful. We, have an eye for detail like that. So here you can see your tenant. In your case, it will be one tenant probably, and one subscription. But as you can see, you can add in multiple tenants. Just be aware that it's single tenant in the way that you will always have one primary tenant, which will be responsible for identity. So authorization, authentication, and so on and so forth with regards to your Azure AD. So that's why it says Azure AD tenant as well, of course. You can, however, add in multiple subscriptions per tenant, if that's something you would like to do, and other tenants can be used for your VMs, for example. So it's sort of split tenant in that way. Very easy to do. Just click link, which goes for all of the other resources as well, by the way, as you can see. Now, let's say you already have an existing WVD deployment. It can be a tenant, it can be a workspace, meaning it can be an older version, it can be a newer version. So what's this now called Classic, and this is the ARM model, if I'm not mistaken. All you need to do is link the network within your subscription, or within your tenant, I should say, and the resource group where that WVD deployment is deployed into. Go over to tenants, or you go over to workspaces, of course. You give the page refresh, and you'll see those tenants or workspaces pop up here together with the underlying host pools and the associated VMs, of course. All you would need to do then is you will have a button saying associate workspace or associate tenant. Well, yeah, that's basically it. Click that button, and then next you will need to do the same for the various VMs as part of that tenant or workspace within one or multiple host pools. And there are buttons which can take care of all of the VMs at one time. You can also do them one by one. And trust me, I'm not able to show it now today, of course, but it's really straightforward and it speaks for itself. And if you have any questions, just let me know, which applies to everything I'm telling you during this session, and I'm showing you as well, of course. No, not a problem. So let's hop over back to environments. We talked about the networks, resource groups. If you are available with availability sets, by the way, these can be enabled like this. They are free. Give it a look, or give it a Google. We actually published a blog post on, well, availability sets, availability zones, and a lot of stuff around making your WVD environment highly available. It's on the Nerdio website. So if you are wondering about availability set zones, some other stuff around high availability, definitely give that a read. With regards to the Nerdio environment, this is a good one as well, because I already mentioned workspaces and tenants, meaning we can manage both from the same interface, as you can see here, which has to do with the object model that you choose. We have set it to hybrid, which is something that we came up with, of course, meaning tenants and workspaces from the same management interface. But as you can see, you can just manage one or the other as well. Once you, let's say, have migrated your tenants over to workspaces, which I'm going to show you in just a couple of clicks also. So integrations, very interesting as well. So I won't talk about the Azure monitoring stuff and AppAttach or MSIX AppAttach, because this is part of a bigger whole, so to speak. Need a bit more time for that, but I'll make sure to do future sessions on those topics together with the REST API as well. But let's have a look at Active Directory. As you can see here, this is the Active Directory that you need to fill in as part of the couple of questions that we got at the beginning, the black page with the hyperlinks. But as you can see as well, you can add in multiple Active Directories. You are technically able to synchronize multiple Active Directories to your Azure AD as well. And then you are able to select different Active Directories and different OUs and so on and so forth on a per host pool level also, which I'll show you as well. Azure files, Azure NetApp files, we created a simple wizard. Just fill in the fields, select the drop-down menus, and it applies, like I mentioned, for Azure NetApp files as well. And everything that needs to be done on the underlying Azure platform and so on and so forth will be taken care of, fully automated. The only thing you will need to do manually is download the generated script to get the Active Directory stuff working as well, as you can see here. Now, FS Logic, sort of the same thing. And again, this is all still the basic configuration. You can change it here. But most of what you see here can be changed on a per host pool level also. Fill in your storage location, configure your registry options, click OK, and that's basically all that you need to do. All right, now let's say we have added proper linked networks, proper linked resource groups. We have added in, let's say, one or multiple tenants. If you have associated them and did a page refresh, this is what that may look like. And as you can see here, we are now able today, and we've had this built in for a long time already, to migrate your older tenants to the newer workspaces. So from non-ARM to ARM, basically. Select your host pool to migrate as part of your tenant. Perhaps give it another name. Select, if you have multiple, the destination workspace to migrate it to, and choose what you would like to do with your user assignments as well. And this basically takes care of the metadata of your tenant, basically. So this is a very quick process. It will be done within a couple of seconds. But of course, you are also able to migrate your VMs as part of your host pools as well. You might want to migrate for bigger host pools, multiple VMs at the same time. You can tell it how many things are allowed to fill before this whole process will be halted. And this can be all scheduled as well. And if there are any active sessions still going on those machines that are migrated, these users will be notified, and then 10 minutes after that, or 15:30, whatever you configure, the migration will commence. So click migrate, it will happen at once, unless you schedule it, of course. So that's how we take care of that. Which brings me to Workspaces. You will then be able, once you have migrated over your tenants, to find those host pools under static host pools. And you can see here we have static host pools and dynamic host pools. And the only difference between the two is that with static host pools, you would need to add in and remove using Manager for Wvd, of course, no PowerShell or anything like that. But you would add in and manually remove machines. So you would need to monitor it manually as well. So you would know when to add a machine, remove a machine, power on, power off, so on and so forth. And with a dynamic host pool, you will be able to leverage our autoscale engine, which will take care of that and a whole lot of other stuff for you. So, like I mentioned, you migrate from tenants to workspaces, you will find them under static host pool, so no autoscaling then. But as you can see, you can easily convert it to a dynamic host pool as well. And again, this will take about 5 to 10, 15 seconds tops. Then, of course, you will be able to find that same host pool under a dynamic host pool. And by the way, you will always be able to add in a dynamic host pool manually to create workspaces and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go over all this now, but if I spend just a couple of seconds more on this, you can see the desktop experience. So hosted, shared desktop, published applications, sort of VDI, non-persistent, persistent. We can do it all basically. Various images, sort of the basics to start out with, creating a dynamic host pool, and this applies to a manual or a static host pool as well, as you can see here. Only because this is not powered by autoscaling, you would need to give in the host count yourself. And of course, you would need to reduce the host count manually and so on and so forth. Which you would do, by the way, if you go into a host pool. I'm not sure if these have machines. And this would be the way to manually remove machines, but also to manually add machines next to the default configuration I just showed you, for example. But all right, let's say you have one or multiple dynamic host pools coming out of your tenants, perhaps. Then you will be able to do autoscaling, configure. You would need to turn it on because it's turned off by default. And this is a lot of information to go through. It's a bit more detailed, but as you can see, you can configure a lot. It's very sophisticated. but it's still easy to set up, easy to configure, easy to manage, easy to get back to and change, and so on and so forth. So this is not something I am going to go over now. Just know that this is the way to get auto scaling to work with regards to the migration, and then from static to dynamic, and so on and so forth. And if you would like to get started with auto scaling, please be my guest. It's a very fun part of Manager for WVD, of course. We have multiple videos on the Zendesk page, and again, I'll share the link at the end of the presentation in the slides. Not a problem, but if you do a Google, let's say NMW/ or something like that, Zendesk, you'll find it as well. A lot of videos on there telling you exactly what it is that you can do, need to do to get certain stuff working, to behave it, let it behave in a certain way. 5 to 10 minutes videos, to the point and easy to digest. All right, here you can see as well that we also calculate your monthly savings when compared to 24/7 pay-per use and so on and so forth. So this is based, as you can see here as well, on the auto scaling engine. And we do that, by the way, on a workspace and on a tenant level, as you can see here also. So that's good to know. Even one step further, on a per host pool basis, you can go to auto scale history. That's always fun to have a look at after the first couple of weeks. Then look over a custom date range the last week, and so on and so forth. And it will tell you exactly what happened at what day, what date, what time, what action it took, why it took it, what the result have been, what your savings might have been as a result of that action, and so on and so forth, and sort of a breakdown on your costs over that period as well. It's very handy to have that available. All right. So you have a couple of host pools, depending on what you have done with your user assignments. This would be the way to manage those users and groups. And by the way, once you get started with this, I would just advise you to, go over one of those drop-down menus. Start here, go over all of the sub options, and work your way from top to bottom, and do the same on this side as well. That's basically the easiest way. See if you can do it without asking questions or looking up any documentation. Probably not, because you need to know a couple of things, where to configure what, of course, not a problem. There's a certain terminology that you use that you might not be familiar with. Give the Zendesk page a visit, type in, let's say, image management or auto scaling or MSIX app attach or whatever you can think of, or licensing, or you name it, and you will find at least one or multiple videos, KB articles, and you name it. Okay, back to this. Manage users and groups, and that's basically all you need to do to search for users or groups, select them, assign them, unassign them, and that's how you take care of assigning users or deassigning, unassigning users to your host pools. Also in this screen, you see user sessions. So if there would be any active or no, fortunately not, or disconnected sessions, you would be able to shadow those sessions, to disconnect them, to log them off. As you can see here, for larger environments, you can filter per host pool, per host username. A couple of options here as well. You name it. All right. At the start, I mentioned that everything you do under settings is sort of the default configuration, and then the rest that you do within Manager for WVD and the host pool level, and so on and so forth, unless you change it, can be changed on a host pool, per host pool level as well. So this is what that would look like. The same menu again. You go to Properties. And here you basically see all of the stuff that I just showed you on the integration page as part of settings as well. Here you can work with different AD configurations, a different OU, for example, just as a quick reference. The WVD doesn't do a lot. You can change the load balancing mechanism. This is just the WVD native service that you'll be changing, of course, nothing within Nerdio. Not really a reason to do so probably, but you can if that's something you would like or need to do. VM deployment, this is a really nice one. So for example, all sorts of gems in here, set the time zone redirection on a per host pool level, accelerated networking, install GPU drivers, all fully automated. If your selected VM as part of the host pool supports those types of features. And here you have availability zones as well. Like I mentioned, we published a blog post on it, but we make all of the information as easy as possible to get to as well from within Manager for WVD. And I already mentioned, of course, the icons. Please make use of those because it will tell you a lot if you don't know what you're doing or need to be doing. A couple of other things as well to have a look at, to think about. Pretty cool stuff. Too much to go over during this session, but this should give you an idea of the possibilities and the granularity that we give you on top of native WVD within your own lab environment even. So custom RDP, easy to configure, easy to get to, all 37 of them, if I'm not mistaken, which will apply to your RDP sessions, of course. Let me see, properties. This would be tagging, just tagging your resources, which can be used for billing purposes on the native platform, for example, if that's something you would like to do, but then available from within Manager for WVD. Average logics, turn it off, turn it on, work with different registry options, use different storage locations, for example. And here you can see use default. So if you enable this, and this will be enabled by default, by the way, this is basically telling the system to use what you have configured under, in this case, integrations under settings. So that's also why I call this the base configuration mainly. Let me see a couple of other things. Custom tags, Sepago, I'll skip that for now. Session time limits, also very cool. Manage your disconnected idle time sessions and so on and so forth. A lot of options to choose from. No GPOs needed for this. You can manage this from within Manager for WVD as well. All right, so like I mentioned, just go over this. Look what you can do at a host level, a couple of other things as well. And one of the last things I'd like to touch on is image management, because it's also next to autoscaling, of course, but a big part of getting started with Manager for WVD within your own lab environments as well. So here you can see, and by the way, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, very stupid, but Q&A has been enabled. It should work. You should be able to ask your questions during the session. And of course, I will have time for questions once I finish the presentation, the session. So not handy, 30 minutes in the presentation, but you've probably found it already, hopefully. All right, back to where I was. So if you import your images into Manager for WVD, you will have multiple things you can do, of course. It will have multiple advantages. So for one, as you can see here, these are powered on. And when you power on an imported image, and I'll get to the import part once I'm done discussing a couple of the management capabilities that we have built in around image management within Manager for WVD. You can tell it to make a backup, store it multiple weeks. If the retention period expires, it will only throw away the copy, basically. So the backup, it will leave the image alone, just so you know. And if you have that, if you've done that multiple times, you will also be able to use versioning, for example, because you can go back in time. So if it doesn't work out in test or perhaps even in production, whatever the case may be, you can revert your host pool to a previous image. All right, a couple of other things you can do. Of course, restore backup. You can initiate a backup manually as well. You can delete it. You can clone it. And if you clone it and you select a network within another subscription, for example, the clone will be sent over. So you'll have that close to your machines over there as well, if that's the case in practice, for example. And of course, a couple of other things to have a look at. Also, a bit too detailed for now, but you get the general idea, I hope. All right. Once you have them imported, like I mentioned, you can also use the IP addresses. That would be the main way to connect up to your images, to connect up to a VM on which your image will be applied, of course. Make your changes, do installations, update software, apply patches, security patches, you name it. You would then choose power off and set as image again, and then the whole sys prepping part will be taken care of for you as well. You won't be held to the the 8 max per image. Start all over. No, you can do it 1,000 times if that's something you would like to do or need. No problem. We take care of that in the background as well. Okay, this is all very cool, and I'll show you how to update your existing host pools or create a new one for that matter as well using one of these images. But first, let's have a look at some of the import options that you have. So a couple of options to consider, of course, or some things you need to select, but this is something we've seen on some of the previous screens as well. Give it a name, description, and basically all we need is the SaaS URL. So we need it to be a managed disk or something that can be turned into a managed disk. If that's something that you have, you can copy over the SaaS URL, paste it in here, and you'll be good to go. And again, here, as you can see, all of those nifty features built in, some of which can be set on a per host pool level also, of course. Have a look at these ones also. Then, when done, Click OK, and it will take 15-20 minutes. It depends a bit for the import to finish. It depends a bit on how big the image is, which region it is, how busy it is in that region, and so on and so forth. Well, makes sense, right? So if we look at the Azure library, we have more options. So for example, you can add in a custom image, or sorry, an Azure Marketplace image, so a ready-made image by Microsoft, and then change that later on, for example. As you can see, H2 has been added. Also, we can work with Azure custom images directly from the underlying Azure platform. So you don't even need to import these. If you create a new host pool, you can also directly select your Azure custom image. And also we directly integrate with the shared image gallery as well. Also an image that you don't need to import, but of course, if you do import your images, you have all of the nifty features, the management capabilities I was just showing you, of course. But these are the options you have with regards to importing your images. But again, Azure custom images, shared image gallery images, if you don't want to import them into Manager for WVD for whatever reason, you don't need to, but it's a possibility. And again, click OK, and this will just take, again, 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the size, the Azure region, and so on and so forth. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, guys, just a couple of seconds. All right, back again. So once you're done here, I've imported them, done some management tasks, perhaps. You might want to go over to your workspaces, and this works exactly the same way for tenants, by the way. Then into your host pools, go over the drop-down menu again, go to hosts and select resize, reimage. Here you will be able to select, well, for example, the image you might have just updated. Have a look at your VM size, West disk. That's also something you can change as part of this process. How many hosts would you like to have updated at the same time? So for bigger host pools, this would make sense. And how many things are allowed to fail before this whole process will be halted. And this can all be scheduled. Again, always keep an eye on your time zone, of course, which applies to some of the other configuration options you have within Manager for WVD also. And also you can repeat this. So here's your daily, weekly reboot schedule as well, if that's something you need for your hosted shared environment, for example. Good to know. And again, messaging is enabled also. Well, you can disable it, of course, but if there are still active sessions as part of this process, or when this process is applied, still active sessions, they will be notified, and then 10 minutes after that, 15:30, and so on and so forth, re-imaging will commence. If you click OK, it will go to sleep if you schedule it, and otherwise it will start out directly. Also good to know that as part of this process, the Azure VM NIC, it's a separate resource, or a VM NIC within Azure, I should say. It's a separate resource within Azure as well. It will be left alone. DNS won't change, or IP addresses will stay the same, and so on and so forth, just so you know. And I haven't showed you that as part of the auto-scaling engine, by the way, but just know that when a machine is added by auto-scaling, it will get a unique name, and it can reuse those names as well. So that means that if machines are added, removed again, and then later on the same day, perhaps a day or a week later, added again, it will reuse those same names, meaning Active Directory will stay clean, GPOs will apply, certificates, whitelisting, you name it. So all those, well, another couple of gems built into the product, basically. Let me hop back to my presentation, see what I have. So again, Zendesk, a lot of helpful resources on there. I mentioned once the installation is done, you need to have a look at the underlying resources to scale those down a bit, perhaps. We have a KB article on that. We have a Slack channel, so if you're not part of that, please consider doing so. We have a couple of support and frequently asked questions in there. We have the sub channel for the community edition in there as well. This is all part of the Nerdio Tech Insider program, of course. So if you haven't joined the meetup page, please consider doing so, because we have a lot of other types of webinars around Manager for WVD, but lots of other stuff as well coming up. And of course, the Slack also. This I will hand out, of course, after the presentation, probably somewhere tomorrow, together with the video as well, which I'll probably publish on my socials, I think. Have a look at it. So handy to have. And let me now hop over to see if there are any questions. I have multiple monitors, so Let's see. Does the offline PowerShell script use the newer AZ model or the older Azure RM? Well, as you've probably seen throughout the session, we come up with both. So use the one that you would like. I think that answers that question. Can you set admin permissions within Manager Easy to allow only management of user sessions? Yes, we have role-based access built in. We also have a custom role coming up as one of the future releases. I think even next month, if I'm not mistaken, and otherwise the beginning of next year. But yeah, you have things like Wvd admin, sysadmins, help desk employees, the end user role, which is sort of a special one. So the end user role is one that if you have a personal assigned desktop, you will also be able, being a user, to log into Manager for Wvd and then start, stop, and restart your own personal assigned virtual machines, for example. So with regards to the differences between the various roles, we have a KB article on that, very straightforward, to the point as well. Will take you 1 minute to go through, and you will exactly know all of the differences between the various roles. Best way to patch machines, so most customers, and of course that's also how it works within Manager for Wvd around image management. You would fire up your image, it will be attached to a VM, all fully automated of course. You would log into that VM, so into your image, make your changes, even store data if that's something you would like to do, apply patches. And then, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, even I think 10 minutes ago or something like that, you would need to choose within Manager for Wvd shut down and set as image again, and then it will be sysprepped, sealed, and so on and so forth. And then you can apply it, like I tried to show you as well at the end, to an existing host pool. But of course, all of your updated images can be used to create new host pools as well, just as easy. Right, okay, so the last question was about that also, as in Azure Update Manager or Intune. Right, so within Manager for Wvd, it's used or it's done through image management. All right, no more questions. I'll hang around just 1 or 2 more minutes if you guys would like to know anything, and otherwise you probably know where to find me as well. My contact details, again, thanks of course everybody for joining, for tuning in, for asking questions. And hopefully for trying out Manager for Wvd Community Edition as well. Have had a lot of good feedback already. Also go to the Slack channel if you have any feedback around features, functionalities, feature requests, things like that. Please leave a couple of comments and get involved. And I think, oh wait, I think I missed 1 or 2. Just 1 minute. Will you have localization support? So deployed sessions can have a right. Not sure on that. That's something I need to look up. I know we're thinking about doing something like that. Not entirely sure if it's or where it is on the roadmap. I'm sure it's coming. I'm not exactly sure if that's coming soon. I might have missed it. Do we have monitoring capabilities as well in this application? Yes, you have. Let me show you 1 or 2 things. So for one, you have all these auditing logs basically, or one big auditing log, which you can get to like this as well, but this is on a per host pool basis. Click the details and you will see exactly what is going on, by which user, what happens at what time, a lot of details. And let me try to find one where a host is being added as well. This one, for example. So here you can see as part of this, so let's say something goes wrong, you will see an error message, but it will also tell you probably what is going wrong. So that helps. Then you can also request your logs, depending on the type of issue you are troubleshooting as well, directly from this details page. You can also go into the host pool and then request logs directly from the virtual machine itself. Select them all or just the ones you would like to have a look at, and they will be downloaded in a .zip format. So very straightforward to get to. Next, we have monitoring. This will be disabled by default. It will also be not viewable, so you won't see the monitoring tab here. You need to go into integrations and then enable Sepago Azure Monitoring, or Azure Monitor, I should say. If you're not familiar with the solution, we have a couple of videos on this as well. Will take you 15 to 20 minutes to get up to speed. You'll know exactly what you need to do, where you need to go, what you need to fill in. This is based on a logs analytics workspace, for example. So a lot of things you can do with regards to alerting around analytics workspaces as well, for example. And you'll end up with 3 base dashboards, which you will then be able to fine tune. You can add in multiple dashboards, remove them, of course, as well, but you will be able to fine tune those exactly, or fine tune them so you have exactly the information you're looking for. Not something I'm going to show you now, of course. I think on Sepago Azure Monitoring, we have 7, 8, perhaps even 9 videos. Again, straightforward 5 to 10 minutes. But each video goes a bit deeper into the configuration of the Azure, in the Azure monitoring solution from Sepago. It's also good to know that this is the only paid-for add-in that we have, but that only applies to production purposes, of course. But if customers would like to start using this solution, for example, just know that this is the only paid-for add-on, and it comes at 50 cents per user per month. So it's really cheap. It's an enterprise monitoring solution. As you can see here, you can get all the information you're probably looking for, and a whole lot more than this also, because you have multiple tabs and you can fine tune them and so on and so forth. Let me see, just one more. Great session. Okay, thank you. That was the last of the Q&A. Again, I'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes more, perhaps even 3 or 4, to see if you guys have any other remarks or questions or anything else, perhaps. Give it to me. And of course, you know, if you have questions tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, I'll still be at Nerdio, so you know where to find me. Let me go back to the slide deck, by the way, so you have my details. Getnerdio.com. B van Kaam, B van Kaam in Dutch. Superb, thanks, nice session. Thanks, guys, really appreciated you joining in. Again, I'll make the recording available somewhere tomorrow, would be my guess. And it's great having you all on board. Really, really fun. It keeps it fun as well to see you all joining each time we do this every month or so. All right, guys, if you don't have any more questions, thanks very much. Or again, thanks very much. I've said it a couple of times already. Appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to to prepping the next session, perhaps in a month's time or something like that. Perhaps the middle of January, something like that, because busy times are coming up for everybody, of course. So, all right, have a great evening, and I'll talk to you guys later.